So this is Coffee Break Chats with Authors. I'm Pete Alden, and I'm very lucky today to be chatting with Marjorie King. Marjorie, welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me.
Really great to have you. And it's sort of middle in the day where I am, but it's late in the day for you, right?
Yes, 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah, the end of a long day.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate your time. Maybe kick off by telling us what you're known for and maybe a little bit about your books.
All right. So my books are, a lot of reviewers have described them as having firefly feels. So it's very much an entire crew. I switch point of views a lot. So I'm telling the story from the different crew members' points of views. I'm a real believer that any big task is a team task. I don't tend to write chosen one stories. I just don't. I don't buy into that. I feel like everything big that's done is done in a team or a family or something along those lines. And my crew does end up becoming family. They do end up meshing and bonding that way, even though they don't start there.
Yeah. It takes a few books to get there? Yep.
They're actually really developing that by the end of book one. And then from there, you get to see their gelled relationship, how it powers through the rest of the series.
Gotcha. So you, in a former life, you were an engineer, and you still are, but why the shift into writing from that career?
Okay, so yeah, once upon a time I was a chemical engineer. I specialized in process controls and automation. So I like to say I designed cruise control for the plant. So you set your cruise in the car and you're going along, and let's say it hits a hill. Well, it says, oh, I'm slowing down. So let me go ahead and speed up. And then it starts going down the hill and it says, oh, I'm speeding up. So let me go ahead and slow back down. Well, I did that for the plant. I programmed the valves so that if we got a big surge, they go, oh, too much flow, let me cut back the valve. Too little flow, let me open it back up. And I did love what I was doing. But 2006, my oldest one came along and I decided I wanted a new challenge. And so I decided to do the full-time mother thing. And I've done engineering and I've done independent author, and full-time mother was the hardest job I've done.
I've heard that a lot. And taking on two new jobs at the same time with the writing and the motherhood. Yeah, good.
I've had to develop very good time management to make sure I get my writing time in every day. And that's been the big thing, is making that a discipline.
I can imagine. It was actually something I wanted to ask you later in the interview, but it might be a good time to sort of stop and do it here. The last 2 years for a lot of people have been about working from home. It's not just authors. What would be some tips for you in terms, like you just mentioned, time management, but do you have any other tips to help people do a good job of both jobs, the parenthood and the day job, which is trying to get to you now via the phone?
That was my alarm that I had my interview right now. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So yeah, like I said, the full-time mom did teach me the time management, especially once the kids were at school and suddenly I had 7 hours. And so I had to learn how to schedule certain mundane tasks. So my laundry is scheduled. Certain laundry is done on certain days. When I clean the house, that's scheduled. When I go grocery shopping, when I set up the projector for church, because I run the church projector, all of those things have a time slot in the week. And then I just have to make sure that my writing time is sacred. That is set aside. It's already scheduled Monday through Friday. I don't write on the weekends. And that time is set aside. And then for my sanity, my husband has been working from home now for 2 years. He would have gone back to work back in January, but he decided to break his ankle. I'm not sure why he decided to do that. It doesn't seem like a smart decision to me. So he's been home since.
It's
He's still
very inconvenient for the rest of you too.
I love him. I take care of him. But for my own sanity, I take a lot of walks around the block. After lunch, I'm walking around the block. After dinner, I'm walking around the block. And that outside time, that fresh air, that alone time, so I can, I'll admit it, talk to myself while I'm walking without anybody looking at me like, why are you talking to yourself? It's just been really nice. And so, yeah, some get out of the house time is very important if you have a stay-at-home job.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of us have missed that opportunity during a lot of lockdowns here in Australia anyway, for a couple of years. You mentioned a lot of writers find it tough to find the time to write regularly because of all those other pressures and demands creeping in. So you mentioned carving that time out for yourself.
Yeah.
Is it like you're kind of making appointments with yourself and people just can't interrupt those appointments?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's it. It's just that time is set for writing. So, Tuesday from 9 to 10, that's grocery shopping, but writing is, and I write after lunch. That's just when I write. And so right after lunch, there's an hour and a half. That's my writing time. And I'm one of those personalities that if this is the time I do that, then this is the time I do it. So that's when I do it. Now, I will say during the pandemic time period, yeah, it's been hard and I have missed a lot. And I just have given myself permission to do that, to just be down and to miss a few.
Yeah.
And I've said, you know what, that's okay. Right now you need a little emotional break.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of us, being kind to ourselves the last 2 years has been very important. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's good advice. That's great advice. Coming back to the engineering, how has that shown up in your writing? How has that informed your writing?
Oh, well, I mean, first of all, I love sci-fi. Of course, I loved sci-fi before I was an engineer, but then I don't know, maybe I've always been an engineer. But yes, the technology side of it, the computer side of it. Also, and this is maybe a little picky, but there are times that I read some sci-fi books and go, no, that's not how space works. And so it's nice having that science background already, so it informs my work. And then occasionally if I hit a spot that I'm like, I might not have that right, let me Google it real quick. At least I have a gut feel for, I might not have that right, or let me make sure I get this absolutely right. So yeah. And then because I'm an engineer, I just love writing sci-fi. It's just fun.
Do you get reviewers commenting on the fact that you've gotten the science right? Or does it kind of just, it doesn't really it's more the opposite. They don't notice it because it actually is a nice blend.
They don't notice it.
Yeah.
Now I will say, if I do get the science wrong, one of my alpha readers is my dad, and he's a sci-fi, he's a space nut. He knows all about it. And so he will absolutely let me know, Marjorie, this isn't right. And so I'll fix it. But no, they mostly comment on the characters and the story, and what that tells me is that the science isn't getting in the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Dad sounds like a great person to have in your corner.
He's so nice. It's wonderful. And he loves my books, and he loves the fact that his daughter's writing sci-fi. It just sort of thrills his day.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So I have a feeling I already know one of the answers to this question, but do you find that there are any themes that emerge in your writing, maybe without you even intending them to?
So yes, absolutely. Obviously family, the fact that it does take a team to do things. Forgiveness is a big theme in my books. Healing and grief. Giving yourself permission to grieve is a huge theme in my books. And that has to do with the inspiration for the very, very first book and where that book was born. I lost my brother in 2013. It was a skiing accident. He wasn't wearing a helmet, missed his baby girl's first birthday by 1 week.
Oh, wow.
And that was in 2013. Yeah. And I grieved hard, and I gave myself permission to grieve. He was worth every tear. But then in 2014, it was weird. I was done crying, but there was still all these weird chunks in me of grief and unresolved. And that's when this story came to me of this group of people thrown together who then suffer loss while they're on this mission, and then have to deal with that and finish the mission. And near the end of 2014, I looked at the story and went, it has a beginning, a middle, and then, oh my gosh, this is an actual real story. Because I'd had stories running in my head, but I'd never had a complete one before. And so January 2015, I was like, you know what, New Year's resolution, I'm just going to write it. I'll just write it and get it out of my head. And so my youngest one was in the bathtub while I was sitting on the toilet, using it as a chair, writing on my notebook with a pen as I wrote my first book. Now, it took 4 years before it was public worthy. It took a lot of rewriting and some editor's help and things like that. But that was the inspiration. So grief played a very important role in that first book.
That's a very powerful motivation and inspiration. Very powerful. Was it cathartic to write that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and it was the things that I worked out and the little bits and emotions that I worked out as I was writing this story. Yeah, it was very healing. It was very healing.
Very powerful, because so much, I mean, we just use the label Hollywood for kind of everything, but you know, Australia's got Hollywood, England's got Hollywood, but so much kind of Hollywood stuff, there's a death, but then it's kind of, yeah, there might be a little bit of a nod to grief, but it's moved on from very quickly.
I know.
That stays with a person for a very, very long time, if not forever. Yeah.
Yeah. I will always miss Keith. But yes, that was what bothered me. Either the death started off the story and it started off a revenge plot, which, okay, I'll get closure once I kill the person who killed my friend. That's not grief. That might bring you a certain kind of closure, but that's not the grieving process. And there is a healing to the grieving process. Or the person dies at the end of the book and suddenly the book's over. And both of those really, really bothered me. I wanted a healthy grieving process to be integral to the book. And so, spoilers, but not too much, there is a major character who passes away right smack in the middle of my book. And the reason for that is so you can see that person develop a relationship with the other characters. And then you can see them heal as they grieve, and they come back together and they complete the mission that meant so much to the character who passed away. So it was very important to me that the healthy grieving process. Also, there is no point where they kill the person who killed. There's no point where the revenge plot comes into play in my books. Yeah. I just didn't think that was appropriate.
Just great to hear. I was chatting with a friend of mine about The Batman, which we both just watched. I just watched it for the second time. And as much as I really love the movie, one of the things that was like, was you had three characters, without spoilers, who are basically on revenge missions. I mean, vengeance is a whole theme in it, but there's no kind of counterweight character, because they've all got this rage, and they all deal with it. You know, but there needs to be a character that weighs that out with, yes, I've got rage too, and I've got pain, and I've got grief, and I've suffered loss, and here's a healthy way that I deal with it. Bruce, you know, why don't you have a look at this as an option? But yeah, so that's beautiful to hear that, and it sounds like it was
important to me.
Yeah. So shifting topics entirely, the thing that you and I started talking about online was the SciFi personality test that you have developed. I'm going to pop a couple of slides up just while you're talking about it. But what was the inspiration for this? What made you create this?
Okay, so it was during lockdown, and I just hit a spot where I just couldn't write. But I still wanted to do something. And this personality, the sci-fi fantasy themed personality test had always been in the back of my head. It had always been there, but you know, I've got to have time to sit down and do it. And this took time to sit down and go through and adapt the Myers-Briggs questions to a sci-fi theme, and then get the quiz, you know, the guts behind the quiz to actually make it work. But yeah, we got on lockdown and I just could not write story. And I was like, well, you know what? It's a perfect time to do the quiz.
Yeah.
And it ended up being such a wonderful tool. First of all, when I'm welcoming subscribers into my list, it's fun to give them that quiz and they really enjoy taking it. But then number two, when it's time to advertise my new books, I send this quiz out on Facebook and it gets the hits. I mean, I don't think I end up paying 3 cents per click. It
Wow.
is crazy how many people will click on this. And then I use that pool to send my advertisement out. Hey, did you enjoy this quiz? Well, then check out my books.
Yeah, what it's brilliant. So you base this on Myers-Briggs. Do you want to just tell people
Yes.
who haven't heard of that? I mean, you could talk about that for hours.
Yes,
But
you could.
in summary, what is Myers-Briggs and how does it kind of relate to this quiz?
Okay, so there are 4 main personalities. The artisans are sort of the athletic, sportsy, fun-loving type. The guardians are going to be more of the traditional family, protect family type. And between artisans and guardians, that makes up about 80% of the population. Then there's the idealists, and they are exactly what they sound like. They're the dreamers, they're the artists, that sort of personality, very, very idealistic. And then they're the rationals, which is me. So your stereotypical engineer would be a rational. I mean, the quintessential rational would be Spock, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the idealists and rationals make up about 20% of the population. And so that kind of gives you a feel. Guardians tend to become nurses and teachers, artisans. You'll find them in athletics. You'll also find them as entrepreneurs. They're going to be the ones who are just, oh, let's go for it. And either they do really well or they crash and burn. The rationals, you're going to find them as your engineers, and then the idealists. And all of this is really vague stereotypes. There are, of course, personality types and all of the different ones. I mean, I'm a rational and I'm a writer. That's generally idealists. So, but there you go. I'm a sci-fi writer, so it makes sense.
Yeah, and you get guardians who run their own businesses and things too. But they're
Absolutely.
they're very positive titles, I think too. Do you? When I took it, I came out as a blend of Dr. Watson and Captain America, and my wife said, "Yeah, probably more Dr. Watson."
Yeah.
But I thought that was a really interesting, an interesting blend. Do you use this in shaping characters in books, like really intentionally, or do you kind of look at the character after they've developed and say, "Oh, they're a guardian, they're a..."
Yes, after the fact. My characters definitely, it's sort of one of those, first there's an idea, and then as I begin writing them, I get to know them better. And then many times by the end of the book, I go, now I know them really well. I go back and reread it and go, oh, nope, they wouldn't have done it that way. They wouldn't have done it this way. They definitely grow very organically.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. All right. So just a couple of things to wrap up with, if my Zoom will cooperate with me. It's going haywire on my screen. Hopefully it's not affecting the video.
Video is good on my side.
Yeah, good. Okay. Then hopefully it's recording. Okay. What's next for your writing? So are you going to continue the same series for long? Or are you branching off? Yeah.
Book 4 is the last book.
Okay.
So book 4 will be coming out very soon, and it is the last book in the series. And then I'm moving on to a robot detective book. It's going to be a human robot duo, and the robot is going to have sort of, or if you're familiar with Murderbot from Martha Wells,
I am.
a very, very sarcastic, anti-human personality. And they get stuck with this one woman detective, and dagnabbit, she keeps working well with the robot and and doing things right, and it's irking it. And they don't like it. So anyway, I mean, she does something like, she actually gives the robot a name. The robot's never had a name before, but she does it in such a logical way. The robot finds himself actually accepting the name, and they're like, this can't get over soon enough. I hope this mission is over soon. Let's solve this quickly. So
This sounds
it's
sounds fantastic. I mean, you had me at robot detective story, but it gets better and better. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. That sounds fantastic.
very much a blending of Isaac Asimov, which was my original sci-fi love, and then Murderbot. So
that's a great blend. Really good
know,
blend.
right?
Yeah. As we wrap this up, we're going to break and do another episode in a second, folks. But what do you have because there are other writers that watch this. Do you have a book recommendation for them as writers, or do you have like a writing exercise or a writing prompt for them?
Well, if you haven't read the Murderbot series, why not? Go get those. But then another series that I've really loved is the We Are Bob series. And sort of one of the reasons I love it is he does cloning the way I agree with it personally. A lot of people, a lot of sci-fi will say, well, the consciousness is actually transferred to the new person. So it's a form of immortality. And I'm sorry, I'm the kind of person that goes, nope, it's a different person.
Yeah.
You've transferred the memories, you've copied the memories. And so they're living with the same, but it is actually a different human being. And the We Are Bob clones absolutely do that. They're like, no, original Bob's dead, but I have his memories, I have his personality, and I am going to move forward. And I am a new being, a new creation. And so I've really, and then on top of that, the books are just really well written. It's and he uses every excuse to name the clones any sci-fi fantasy name he can get. I mean, he has Loki and Thor, he has Hal, he has Hannibal, he has
do the clones reflect
Riker.
those? Oh, do the clones reflect those names? So they kind of grow into the name?
Actually, they pretty much keep the original Bob.
Okay.
They are original Bob, but he's such a geek that it works. So anyway.
Here's the annoying thing about doing these interviews. I wind up with a to-read list that's like 15 miles long. That sounds great. Sounds really, very cool. Yeah. Very cool. Well, Marjorie, I'm going to put some details for where people can sign up for your newsletter, find out particularly about the SciFi test, our personality test, in the show notes. But I want to thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Cheers.